This program, I guess, will have a special spot among the other programs that we have in KADIT. So our moderator is Batuhan. He can tell us all the details and we can start. I am personally super excited because I did my master in Quranic exegesis. So I am super excited and looking forward to start. Let's start.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone, fellow participants. It's my honor to welcome you to tonight's online seminar. We have also international participants. I believe both the topic and our guests receive a lot of attention. As you know, we started our seminars on Islam, and today is our first step. And it will be about the early Quranic manuscripts. My name is Batuhan Yıldız. I'm a member of our research team in KADIT. Our esteemed guest, Dr. Éléonore Cellard, I am sorry, please excuse my French, is a scholar whose work has illuminated the world of early Quranic manuscripts, particularly those are dating between the 7th and the 11th century CE. So we will start with an introduction, and then we'll listen to our guest, and then we'll receive questions. So if you have a question in mind during the presentations, we kindly ask you to hold them until the end and use the raise hand button below. We'll also look at the chat, but our preference is using the raise hand button. So now allow me to introduce Dr. Cellard by providing a brief overview of her academic journey and her contributions to this field. So Dr. Cellard's research interests have revolved around the history of the Qur'an and Quranic manuscripts with a specific focus on the first 4 centuries of Hijrah. So it's the earliest forms that we know. Her expertise extends to Arabic paleography and codicology, the collections of manuscripts, the history of book production in Islamic lands, philology, the history of the Arabic language, and historiography. So she began her journey with a bachelor's degree in Arabic language, Arabic literature and civilization from INALCO, abbreviation of the National Institute of Oriental Languages and Civilizations, Paris, in 2007. She pursued a master's degree in Arabic language, literature, and civilization. Additionally, she completed bachelor's degrees in Syriac and Akkadian languages in Paris. So beware. Her journey continued with a PhD in the same field from INALCO, the same institute, in 2015, and her doctoral research titled The Handwritten Transmission of the Quran, the Study of Corpus of Manuscripts from the 2nd after Hijrah or 8th Common Era century, but only in French, of course. Dr. Cellard has held various academic appointments. She has been lecturer at INALCO and a scientific associate for the Quranica project at the Corpus Coranicum, Berlin-Brandenburger Academy of Sciences from 2012 to 2015. Her journey also includes research and teaching assistant and a postdoctoral researcher roles at the Collège de France, Paris. She also conducted a postdoctoral project focusing on the manuscripts of Caliph Uthman, especially the manuscript of the Mosque of Amr in Fustat. I believe that manuscript has some organic connection with one of the manuscripts in Istanbul. So I'm certain that today's seminar will be a fascinating exploration of the rich history and scholarship surrounding the Quranic manuscripts. So thanks to our distinguished guest. So please join me in a warm welcome to our guest, Dr. Éléonore Cellard, and let us proceed. So thank you, Doctor. Stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me here. So I will talk for about, I think, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and we will have a discussion. I want to have to keep time for having discussion. Mm-hmm. So let me share my screen first before forgetting. Okay. So I'm very happy to see that many people are today present, and I presume that all of you are interested in the study of Quranic manuscripts. And it's exceptional because it's Saturday evening, and I presume that everybody has have other things to do. But I hope that you will learn something today from my specific, because it's very specific approach of the materials. So you already introduced myself, but I would like just to record that I started to study early Quranic manuscripts in master degree with my with Professor Desroches, and I continued on the same topic for the PhD. And in the same time, and afterwards, I collaborated to 2 projects with Corpus Coranicum, and which is a research team from Berlin. And I just would like to illustrate these projects. So the first project was Quranica, and it focused on the earliest Quranic manuscripts. And for selecting these manuscripts, we choose one specific criterion, which was paleography, and we selected all manuscripts written in the same script style, which was the Hijazi style. And our project was to do transliteration of text. So we started to edit several manuscripts, and for now I think only one is published. But there are also others still in preparation. So this is the first project, and we had, after this project based on chronology, we had another project with the same team, and this one, Paleo-Quran, was focused more on the criterion was more geographical. We collected every manuscript from the same provenance, with the same provenance, the Mosque of Amr in Fustat in Egypt. So we selected all of these manuscripts from the 7th to the 8th to the 10th century, and we tried to understand if they were made in the same place, with the same script styles, same materials, same reading also, because many of them have also dots reading a Quranic reading. So we tried to do a kind of inventory of this library and compare the manuscripts themselves. So this project ended in 2018. And after that, I got a scholarship for 1 year, but actually with Corona, it became 2 years. And it was from a French Ministry of Interior. And my project focused on one specific manuscript attributed to Caliph Osman, which was preserved in several libraries, institutions. So as you can see on the picture, the main, the very big part of the manuscript is today in Dar el-Kutub. So I had to go to Dar el-Kutub. Here it's just 1 month before Corona in France. And I had to go also because this manuscript is dispersed between different institutions. So I had to collect parts of the same manuscript from Paris. I went also to Istanbul, to the Museum of Islamic and Turkish Arts. And there are also other folios in Germany and also in USA. So after this project, which is still I am concluding my my monograph on this project, I will submit it very soon. After this project, actually, I went to Morocco to how to say it was to confirm some hypotheses. And when I went to Morocco, I discovered an amazing collection of early Qurans, many still preserved in mosques libraries. So it was complete different condition of work. because I knew only museum and large Western libraries and institutional libraries, but mosques library was a different condition of work. So, and when people show me these Kufic manuscripts, I realized that most of these materials were not totally unknown from me, because for each manuscript there, I knew one or more leaves that were sold in Sotheby's or in Christie's, so in auctions. And so I decided to lead a new project for having a complete inventory of these manuscripts and their study. Because people, their curators or scholars, they don't know anything about these manuscripts. And if we want to stop the looting, we have to understand the value of these Kufic manuscripts. Because today they are just fragmentary and unknown. We have no name, no colophon, so we don't know when they have been produced, where they have been produced, or who produced them. So they have no, the historical value is unknown. But to protect and to prevent the looting, we have to understand their historical value, and not the market value, actually. So this is why I started this project as an independent scholar. So I have no funding for this project. So, well, in short, I am working on early Quranic manuscripts since almost 15 years. I saw a lot of manuscripts with my eyes, and I could take them in my hands. And I think that's a great experience today, because now we are moving in another world, because there are digital images available online. And people can work on digital images. And most of us, we work mainly with digital images. But we forget that handling the manuscripts is a complete different experience, because we are more, when we handle the manuscript, we are more aware of their age. We see their fragility, and we realize how incredible it is that they survived until today. So now for this seminar, I would like to synthesize a little bit what we know about early Quranic manuscripts. I would like to give a kind of overview of these manuscripts. And I think this matches with your expectation. But you will give me your opinions after. So this overview is of course based on the available materials. So the more we will add materials, and the more we will understand the written transmission of the Quran in the first Islamic century. So I have to begin by exposing the main problem when we study early Quranic manuscripts. As I said before, until now, there is no manuscript with a secure date or secure place of production or name of copyist before the middle of the 3rd century Hijra, 9th century. Here you can see the earliest colophon. A colophon is a technical name for this type of small informative text. So you have the name of the copyist, and sometimes you have the place. This is not our case, but we have the date. So it's dated from 246 Hijra. This is the earliest colophon. It has I published it in a chapter from Le Coran des Historiens. Anyway, actually, there is another colophon earlier than this one. This one here, it is kept in Paris. But we have a small problem with that manuscript. At first sight, the writing of the colophon looks like different than that of the text. But to my view, that it doesn't mean it's a fake, because people assume that it's a fake. But maybe it's not a fake, or maybe it's much slightly later than the manuscript itself. But we have to keep it in mind. What happened? So what happened before that 3rd century? And even during that century, because we have only a few dates. Before and during the 3rd century, actually, we have a kind of black, very large black hole regarding the chronology around 2 centuries. We don't know anything about the written transmission. We don't have absolute dating for the manuscripts. So we need to rely on other evidences for having an idea of the dates, but also on the place and of the context in which the manuscripts have been produced. What kind of evidences we can use for dating the early manuscripts? Actually, there are manifold. Like we can consider first the shape of the manuscript. We have vertical, we have horizontal manuscripts. We have also small manuscripts or very, very large manuscripts. So the size is also useful. And don't forget the making of the manuscript, how the sheet of parchment, it's animal skin, how the sheets are arranged inside. So this part is kind of codicological approach, and it is useful for dating the manuscripts. But we can also look at the script styles, or even the layout of a layout presentation. It's the presentation on the page. For example, how many lines of writing, the spacement between the lines, the margins also. As you can see on the left, there is almost no margins. There is a small internal margin, but the outside margin is almost inexistent. But if you consider on the left, on the right picture, the Kufic folio, you have large margins. You can also consider ornamentation. And another features is, of course, the orthography of the text. So you have textual features. So you have orthography, and this is very, very interesting, actually. But we cannot precisely date the manuscripts based on orthography, because the copists are written the sacred word of God. So they are more conservative than in other texts, where they can change the orthography. For the Quranic text, the evolution of orthography is slower, and probably depends on the different social milieu. We can have people more conservative than others. So orthography as a criterion is very difficult to use for dating the manuscripts. But as a general observation, we can see that some words like the verb qala slightly evolved and integrate alif, middle alif. So we have this kind of evolution. Like here on the picture, you have qalu. On the left is written without alif, and on the right is written with alif. And besides orthography, you can also consider the separation of the surah. And this is also a very important aspect. And we cannot base ourselves on a very simple chronological frame, like first we have nothing, then we have ornament, then we have title. This hypothesis was assumed by scholars in the 11th century, in the 19th century, 20th century. Even in the middle of the 20th century, people were thinking about this very simple chronology, but actually it's more complex than that. We have the San'a palimpsest, it has title, and and we have other very early fragments with ornaments. So every this aspect is much more complex than a simple chronology. So all of these parameters could help for giving an idea of how the text, the Quranic text, was written in the early centuries. But before entering in that discussion, we must consider a very, very important aspect of our materials. Most of the manuscripts which are preserved today and on which we base our reconstruction, these manuscripts come from mosques, and mosques located in the center of the empire, like Egypt and Syria, but also Yemen, and more in the west, you have also another mosque, very famous Qayrawan. So these materials we are using in our research seem to have been part of public libraries and for centuries, because we have some manuscript, we have the endowment is written on them. This is the manuscript for which we have one folio in auction today in Sotheby's. So this manuscript, for example, has been endowed to the Amr Mosque in the 4th century Hijra, and we discovered it in the 19th century. Can you imagine that from the 10th century to the 19th century, this manuscript stayed in the Amr Mosque, but not hidden. It was not hidden. The manuscripts were not hidden. They were available. The manuscripts were not just put it in mosques for being forgotten. No, they were used. People used to read the manuscripts because we have we can see some. Okay, I forgot my PowerPoint. So I was saying that the manuscript came from mosques. You have several examples of the mosques. And here you can see that the manuscripts were not hidden. They were read and they were used and they were corrected. The ink was, the text was re-inked in the course of time. And you have also some repairing. Here you can see this is the famous on the left part. You have the famous, Birmingham manuscript, the one which has been dated very early, with a very early dating by carbon 14. So here you can see a kind of repair, and you can detect writing, and it shows you that it's a later writing. It's on paper. It's a paper repair. So this could this show us that the manuscripts were repaired even very late time after their production. So they were not not forgotten in rooms of the mosques. So it's completely wrong to talk about discovery of manuscript forgotten since centuries. And I mean, these are expressions that scholars like to use. So no, the manuscripts were not forgotten. They were available. We see that in Egypt or in Palestine, at least, we have a great effort to restore the manuscripts in the 17th, 18th century. Many manuscripts were restored in this period. So there is no hidden manuscripts in these storages, except in case of palimpsests. This is a case of hidden manuscript because it is hidden behind another text. Here, I give you some examples of palimpsests. All of these palimpsests are from Sana'a, and of course on the left it's the most famous palimpsest. So we have what is a palimpsest is actually you have written your text on your material, and you want, after some years, you want to write another text, but you don't have any more material, so you just have to erase your first text. And on parchment is very resistant, so you just have to use you can use lemon juice. Actually, it works very well. You use lemon juice, and you can reuse after your parchment. So when you have economical constraints, you can produce palimpsests. Here it's only some examples from Sana'a, but we know other examples, other palimpsests, and from other places like Damascus. We had a lot of palimpsests in Damascus, but they are much later from these examples. So in that case, we can speak about hidden text, because the first text is hidden by the second one. And I don't think that other people than crazy scholars like us try to read what was erased. So anyway, here I give you a list of the earliest. Here again, another palimpsest. So here is a list of some early manuscripts for showing that they are not so badly damaged, as we still preserve an extensive part of the volume. And I'm always very surprised when I heard some people, scholars, very distinguished scholars, who speak about, who assume that the Quran was written under Caliph Abdel Malik, and they don't want to consider earlier manuscripts, because they say these manuscripts are fragmentary. We don't know if they were written as a complete, to be complete a Quran first, or they were just written as part of the text. And of course, the manuscripts are fragmentary today because they have 14 centuries. I cannot imagine to preserve a text for during all of these centuries. It's impossible. And the manuscripts have been damaged with time. Of course, they were preserved. They were not in the Louvre Museum. There were no this kind of curatorial condition of preserving the manuscripts. So for me, today we have fragmentary manuscripts, but because of time, not because of the primary stage of writing. Anyway, besides these public materials, we have very few evidences regarding the writing of the Quran in other circles, like more private circles. Maybe Egypt preserves a few materials, like fragments of the Quran on papyrus. But these are probably written in a fragmentary way, because we don't preserve a lot of them, and sometimes we can detect that they were written as just excepts, pieces of the Quran, not as a whole. So maybe these fragments were like used in private circles, and maybe they were used for different purposes. Maybe inscriptions in Arabia or Jordan could give us a more precise idea of what was the copy of the Quran by non-professional people, but definitely not the manuscripts. The manuscript we preserve today were they are mainly, if not all, written by professional scribes, and they show a very, very homogeneous writing tradition. And if we consider the high number of manuscripts and the quantity of materials used for their production, we can think that we are in front of the prevailing line of the Quran written transmission. So whatever we find in the future, maybe we will discover a situation like the Qumran cave, manuscripts hidden in a place and never read, never touched afterwards. But whatever we find in the future, I think what we know today will not be completely put into question. So now let's talk about the copying of I forgot also to show you some Quran manuscripts on papyrus. Anyway, let's talk about the writing of the Quran manuscripts in early times. So from a very general point of view, I would describe it as a continuous effort to standardize, homogenize and control each aspect of the manuscript. We are dealing, as I said, with professional scribes, and they establish rules for each feature. Scripts, making of the book, ornamentation, everything becomes highly controlled. Along centuries, we see much more control of the parameters, the written parameters. If we now focus on the early centuries, we have now enough evidence for admitting that we preserve manuscripts from the two earliest centuries of Hijra, even if they don't mention a date. So how many manuscripts there are? For now, it's difficult to give a precise number because leaves from the same manuscript can be dispersed. As I said, now we have, for example, we have a leaf from one manuscript sold in Sotheby's, but the rest of the manuscript is mainly in Paris, but we have other leaves in Gotha in Germany. So one same manuscript can have leaves dispersed all around the world. But what about the earliest one? I would say I've seen around 100 different manuscripts from that earliest period. So here on the screen, you can see very likely manuscript from the first century Hijra. These are written in Hijazi style, which is a script style close to the papyri of that period. And two of their features, okay, here you can compare, we compare the script style with the style used in papyri of the early century, and you can see that they are very, very similar. And two of their features, the leaning of alif and elongation of verticals, this feature, they could match with the description of Ibn al-Nadim in the 4th century Hijra. And it's regarding the earliest Arabic scripts. So now we can use another tool to date the manuscript. So since the last 2 decades, around 2 decades, we date the manuscripts with carbon dating analysis. And that method gave us very early results for the few Hijazi manuscripts we could analyze. And here I give you some results. So basically, you have to take a sample of parchment and to obtain dating. So here it's a very big sample, but we can use a very smaller samples. And it's important to keep in mind that you don't date the script, the writing of the text. You date the parchment. This is important, but we also so we can imagine that the parchment is earlier than the writing of the text. It's possible, but if you put it in the context, historical context of the Hijaz in the 7th century, why we would produce so many parchment while we are in war, while we need skin, and skin was used for making your shoes, making many vital things. So if you make parchment is not useful except for writing books, for writing texts and long texts. If you just want to send a message for the army, you can use another material. You can use stone, you can use camel bones, you can use many different, or palm wood, you can use many different materials. But if you have to write a book, a long text, you have to use parchment. So you will do parchment if you have a project, a writing project behind. So to my eyes, these parchments are not very much earlier than the writing. So they are very close stages. Here, give you, okay, we have some manuscripts, we have dated some manuscripts, and it gave us very early results, as you can see, but there are variations between the laboratories. First, that's the first observation. Laboratories can vary, but the results tend to place more in the first half of the 1st century, as you can see. So, as I said, it doesn't mean that the manuscripts were exactly written in that time, but I think the difference was not very large. Maybe a decade, maybe. Anyway, we must keep in mind that this method dates the material and not the writing. Anyway, and I have another example, which is later, which is indeed a case of we have a dated manuscript, and we try to use carbon-14, radiocarbon, to see if the radiocarbon is agrees with the date of the colophon, the date of the writing. And indeed, the results show that radiocarbon, we obtain an early date and from the writing. Indeed, it's exactly the case, but here we have to keep in mind that the Nurse Quran was written in the 5th century Hijra, so it's a complete different historical context. In that context, in the 5th century Hijra, we can produce, we are already a written established tradition, and we can produce parchment in advance in order to write a Quran much later. So I think this example is not cannot be used for criticizing radiocarbon results for the early century, the first century. This is completely different. Anyway, let's move. Let's return to the early century Hijazi manuscripts. So in my eyes, if this very early dating is accurate, it has one consequence. In my eyes, based on the material examination, these manuscripts, they cannot be the earliest witnesses of the Arabic book handwriting, of manuscript practice, because the scribes who made these manuscripts, they know very well how to produce books. As you can see, we have already in the first century here, we have already large vertical books and smaller horizontal books. And making small books can be explained by economic constraints, okay, but that's perhaps not the only explanation. And I recently investigated these manuscripts and more in details the horizontal small manuscript on the top of the picture. And it exhibits a full system of consonantal diacritics, while other related manuscripts, large and vertical, have less dots. So this could mean that already at that time, so we are in the first century, that already at that time we make different formats with different functions. So it's already something very standardized in the first century. We are probably in the second half of the first century, but it's already something very with a very comprehensive structure. On the paleographic aspect, the Hijazi script is already submitted to rules of calligraphy, which are different from the way to write in everyday life. We compare, of course, we can compare the writing of the manuscript with the papyri, but actually we compare very, very teeny details. But if you compare as a whole, you can see that the manuscripts are written by professionals, and there is already something like calligraphy. The copists were obviously, they were already trained in calligraphy. Of course, the script style is not highly standardized, but we can observe variations in the hand of the same copyist when we preserve enough leaves of a given manuscript, of course. We can also identify different copists, like in the Codex Parisino-Petropolitanus. Here we can identify 5 scribes. They work together in the part of the manuscript we have today. Maybe there were more copists, but we don't have evidence. Today we have almost half of the manuscript, and in this half we have 5 copists working together. And that's very usual in the few well-preserved Hijazi manuscripts we've studied yet. They result from a collective work. That's very interesting, actually. It's here we have a big team. We have 5 copists. They were probably led by a master, because you can, if you study how many leaves people were producing, we can see that there is one copyist, a major copyist, and the other were writing only a very few parts. So we have probably a master and the students. But in other manuscripts, like in the Sana palimpsest, we identified only 2 scribes, and they worked together in a different way. They were like equally. So at least it's based on what we have today, but we see that the scribes were more likely colleagues working together. But it's a different situation from the Codex Parisino-Petropolitanus. But whatever how the team worked, they follow always the same rule. And that's very interesting. When they want to change the hand, when they want to change the scribe, the scribes, they always relay each other on the same page. They don't work separately on different materials, on different folios. They use the same material and they change hands between the recto and the verso. Well, that's not very practical, but maybe because their handwriting are not similar, they want to keep the unity of style. Maybe when you open the manuscript, you will always have the same hand. So you have a kind of a unity of style. But I have another hypothesis. Maybe when you finish your page, when you have written your page, you have to wait for the ink to dry. So you have to wait at least, I try to compare, but I mean, before the ink was dried, I had to wait maybe 5 minutes, maybe a little more. So this is time to take your makeup pose and change the copyist. Anyway, that's my hypothesis. And that's this practice of changing hands. We find it in all of the Hijazi manuscripts, whatever the provenance, manuscript found in Egypt, manuscript found in Damascus or in Sanaa, we have the same practice. So provenance, provenance means, just to be clear in definition, provenance means the last place where the manuscripts were kept. It's not necessarily linked to the place of production. That's important to state that. But we cannot, even if we have this in mind, we cannot that these places preserve material with their own specificities. For example, we have manuscripts discovered, so provenance discovered late in Egypt, and some of them, several of them, write Qaf with a dot above, while others follow the inverse rule. So here, I don't know, yeah. We can see, so this manuscript came from Egypt, and we can see that they follow a specific rule that could be characteristic of an Egyptian practice. Today we know it in the west part of the Islamic empire, of the Islamic lands. But probably at first, this rule was used also in Egypt. So maybe this manuscript can illustrate a regional production in the first century. At least this is what my recent investigation on manuscripts from Egypt supports. So I've talked a lot of manuscripts written in Hijazi style, and I see that it's almost time's up. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about Kufic. I speak too much, it's terrible. So we suppose that Kufic is later than Hijazi. Actually, it could be from the same period. We have inscriptions that prove that Kufic was already used. We have manuscripts where different copies use different styles, Hijazi, and some more, it's more Kufic. So I don't think we can imagine like Hijazi, Kufic, something very linear. It's not, it's definitely not linear, and it depends also on geography. probably. So we have regional writing. Here I show you that it's already more Kufic than Hijazi, and they were worked in the same time. Anyway, we have very different varieties of Kufic. This is Desroches classification. It's a little bit obscure for many of us, even for me sometimes. But we see that Kufic is actually something very, very, very large. We have the same script style found in with different provenance. That's very, very interesting to see that the same script style seem to have been diffused in different places. And at some point, we have the introduction of a new style, I would say at around the 3rd century, because as we return to our first colophon, the earliest colophon, we can see that it's dated 246, and it's already not anymore Kufic, but already new style. Anyway, let's move and let's finish. So this is a kind of new style, and why we started to use new style, it's probably also linked to the use of paper, because at that time, in the 4th century, we started to use also paper for Quranic manuscripts. And I would like to conclude with, so we've seen a lot about manuscripts, but I would like to record you that the most we know today is based on a very small part of what exists today. And what we know is mainly based on what we studied, and these manuscripts studied are mainly from one specific provenance, which is the Mosque of Amr in Fustat in Egypt. And we still have today many discoveries to do, like we have this manuscript collection from Damascus, the Great Mosque of Damascus. We have almost 200,000 folio of Quranic manuscripts. That's a very, very huge. It's much bigger than what we have in Fustat. So these leaves are today kept in the Museum of Islamic and Turkish Arts in Istanbul, and they are waiting us for new investigation and for new discoveries. Thank you. So now you have only 6 minutes, but we can, it's not a problem. We can continue. It's for me, it's okay.
Thank you for the great presentation, Dr. Cellard. Really, it was really enlightening. Now, yeah, we're gonna receive questions. So,
do I stop my screen, or what you want to?
I think it's completely okay,
Okay.
for us. Yeah, it's a good background, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, yeah, we have a question from Mujahid first, because
thank you, Doctor. I think this was one of the most informative presentations that we have ever seen in KADIT. My question is actually, I guess, is in a lot of people's mind. What is the earliest Quranic manuscript? It might be fragment, it might be a manuscript, it might be incomplete piece of parchment, but what is the oldest piece of Quranic material we have today?
Yeah, thank you. That's of course that's a very, very important question, but I would say we cannot we cannot answer, because yeah, probably one of these Hijazi manuscripts is the earliest one, but which one? Actually, that's a good question. The one with the decoration in Birmingham, or the one without decoration, the Codex Parisino-Petropolitanus, or the one in Sana'a, because it's a palimpsest. No, actually, they all have almost the same characteristics. We use carbon, radiocarbon for dating them, but carbon 14 gives you a range of dates, and in this range it could be any date possible. So we cannot have a precise dating for these manuscripts. We don't have the answer. I don't think we will know one day which one was earlier than the others, but we have this family. We can consider this family as the earliest representative of Quranic manuscripts.
Thank you.
All right.
Then, do we know the range, the historical range, the earliest, the group of, the materials, as you point out?
So many manuscripts point to many results, radiocarbon results point to, I would say, the first half of the first century. This is no, sorry, the first we are talking in Christian era with a carbon 14. So this points to the first half of the 7th century. We had some results earlier than Islam with the Birmingham manuscript, but we still have to consider this range, which was okay. The earliest date was before Islam, but the latest date was almost with Caliph Osman, little bit later. So and again, in this range of dates, it could be any date possible. It's not necessarily before Islam. It could be any date possible. So we can say, I think, if we want to agree with the Islamic tradition, and I think it's something which is very which has to be considered. We can say that the turning of the first and second half of the 7th century is a good point to consider our manuscripts.
Okay, thank you so much.
Dr. Cellard, I've been warned to if you can end the presentation so the people can see the who asks questions on their face.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you. There are questions, but most they're written. So if there are no one who wants to raise a hand and ask a question, I will continue with the written questions. Anyone? So okay, let me take one of the written questions. I think you must heard this question a lot. Like, of course, the people are mainly curious about what were written in these palimpsests. Like, what was the message that were erased? Were they also Quranic texts? I knew we all know that you also found a biblical text erased and used later, but in these centuries, especially during the Hijazi and the Kufi script times, like, what are the writings who are erased to create a new manuscript?
Yeah. Okay, so as I said, yeah, we have several palimpsests, and Sana'a is, I would say, very special for us, because in Sana'a we discovered, again, I use discovering, but as I said, it's not really discovery. So in Sana'a we have this palimpsest, which is very, very early, which is written in Hijazi script. And actually, it's not just a small fragment, because we have a lot of leaves. We have almost the half of the complete Quran. So it's not nothing. We have hundreds, almost 100 leaves. I don't remember exactly right now. I'm tired. But I know that we have almost 40% of the text. So it's not just a small fragment, and all of the leaves are written first, erased, and rewritten again. And it's very, the earliest text is written by the same two copists. I said there were two, but they worked as a team, so we can reconstruct, we can follow their work together. So they didn't work as like it was something, the erased text was a manuscript itself. It was thought, prepared as a book, as a full, the whole Quran, and the text which has been erased was also a Quranic text. And this Quranic text, we wonder why they erased it, but actually, this is very clear that they erased it. It was erased because it was non-canonical text. I won't say it's completely different. It's not completely different because we can identify, just we read some passages and we can say it's Quran. But it was not, as I said, people were trying to control as much as possible the text. And if something was not in agreement with what they wanted, I show you that qalu was written without alif, and it has been corrected. Very soon it has been corrected. So people were correcting their manuscripts, and they found this palimpsest maybe very soon after the first writing. And in this manuscript, the surah were not in the same order. This is the first observation. Within the surah, the verse are in the same, they follow exactly the same order. But the surah are not in the same order. But they follow the same principle. The longest surah are placed at the first. This is the same principle, but the order changes a little bit. Then you have some slightly change in the rasm. We have different, we have synonyms, some synonyms, some, I don't have the word in English. I'm sorry. It's a kind of, it's longer. It's more, it's to explain, to be a little bit clearer about in the verse. But basically, it's exactly the same meaning. It doesn't change. And just, I think, just because it was because of these slight differences, it has been erased. And if you look at, so completely erased, but in a very professional work. They just cut it, the thread, and washed every bifolios and rewrite it again. And they wrote this time the correct the canonic text.
Okay, thank you so much.
I don't know if I answered, if you had, and palimpsest, actually it's a kind of economic practices. So in Sana we found palimpsest with Quran underwriting and Quran per writing, but in Egypt I discovered this manuscript. We had a biblical text, so they just wanted to reuse it. And in Damascus we had also other examples. We had non-canonical, non-sacred text. I think it's not a sacred text. It's a kind of literary text with the Quran written above.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, you answered the question, by the way. And now I see Ozarif Demir has a question. And yeah, let me.
Good evening to Dr. Cellard.
Good evening.
Thank you for accepting the invitation and your presentation. My question is not directly related to manuscripts. From what you're observing so far in your research field, would it be appropriate to say that the written Quranic history justifies the preservation of the message of the Quran? Because some researchers on the orthography differences seem to be trying to challenge this claim. And according to the Muslims, the Quran, in a sense, is a book that is recited and orally transmitted, rather than a written one, when it comes to obeying what the context says. And probably that is why its name stems from the word qara'a. Who knows? What is your take on this?
Well, I would say, yeah, we used to say to think that the oral tradition is very, very important for the transmission of the Quran, and it's probably right. But I won't say the written word was not important. Actually, no. We have too many manuscripts, and we spend too many money in terms of buying materials. I mean, if you want to just have a record of or what you remember, you don't buy exceptional materials. Just go and buy papyrus. I mean, it's not expensive papyrus, but no, people, they wanted good books, and I show you that. We have some, probably in the early century, we already have large manuscripts, but we also have smaller oblong manuscript with the full diacritics and diacritical dots. So that means these manuscripts were not just put it in mosque to show people we have a Quranic text, it's okay. No, and we don't use it because we have an oral tradition. No, I think this small oblong manuscript show that we have also a use of the manuscript. We have a use of these small oblong manuscripts, and the fact is that we have fewer small oblong manuscripts because probably they were more used, and they were more probably diffused, because this small manuscript, we also find the same kind in Qayrawan. So that means they probably circulated more. And I think the use of manuscripts at an early period was very, very important of course, for the caliphs, but also governors, and even for people, and even people who cannot read, because at that time, of course, there is a very small part of the population that can use a manuscript. But the manuscript has a role in the mosque. We have these very, very, very huge manuscripts, and these were playing the role only to be with exhibition in mosque. I mean, this is also an active role to be exhibited in mosque. We have like procession. People were taking the manuscript, so there were complete session around the manuscripts. So they have a place, a very important place in the early centuries of Islam. That's what I can say.
Thank you. I guess it will be okay to say the written and the oral tradition both equally important.
Yeah, and the oral tradition, of course, it's important, and we see how oral arrived also in the writing with the introduction of the use of vowels. A lot of manuscripts were vocalized, and we see the importance of vocalization in the manuscript themselves. We have this recording of reading That's amazing to imagine that we can, if we understand well, this is probably the main issue. If we understand well these dots, we can reconstruct the reading of the 2nd or 3rd century. That's absolutely fascinating.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, Dr. Cellard, I hope that you have time because we have 2 more questions, and
yeah, it's
we
okay.
would be really happy if you could, answer them. Okay, so let's continue with the Mr. Domagoj Marinovic. No, we cannot hear you right now.
Okay, I think now it's okay. No.
No, I think now we should hear, but we cannot hear. I think there might be a problem with the mic settings.
Let me try without.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's perfect.
That's okay.
Okay. It was a problem with my headset.
Yeah.
My question is the places in the mosques where the manuscripts were kept. Is there anything else that was kept there, like maybe secondary texts that are not Quranic manuscripts but might reveal more information about them?
Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting question. Thank you. So for actually, we don't know for the Amr Mosque because we were not. It was at the beginning of the 19th century, and we only have a part of what was taken at this point. But we know that for the Damascus Mosque, it was a mass of documents. So not only Quranic manuscripts, but we have also biblical text. We had different literary text also and documents. So it was mixed together. And for the Sana, for which the discovery is even closer to us, we have a very, very good records. And we know that these manuscripts were mixed with other non-Quranic texts, but I think only Arabic. I don't remember if in Sana we had other languages. In Damascus, yes, but in Sana I don't know. But they also found newspaper. I mean, so that means these deposits were very, very recent. At least for Sana, it was very, very recent. But yeah, for the Amr Mosque, we don't know. But for the others, there were not only Quranic mass. Did I answer your question?
Mr. Marinovic? Yeah, we cannot hear you. I think you did, Dr. Cellard. So
Okay.
I think
thank you. I was just muted. I couldn't unmute. Thanks for the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, so we can continue with Mr. Taha Portacı.
Doctor, first of all, thank you very much for this good presentation.
You're welcome.
We know that there are different ways of reading Quran. We say that for this Qira'at-ı Seba or Qira'at-ı Ashara, is it possible to see these different reading styles in terms of writing in these manuscripts?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Thank you for the question. Yeah, because as I said, in the 8th century, in the 2nd century Hijra, people started to add dots with colors, different colors, red, green, sometimes yellow and blue. So they started to introduce these dots, and these dots correspond to a reading, and we can say that at first the readings of the manuscript do not match exactly perfectly with one specific reading. It's sometimes, I mean, they take some specific feature of different systems. Because we are in the 8th century, in the 2nd century Hijra, maybe it was not completely fixed, and maybe the people who vocalized, who added the dots, were not were different people who were writing the treatise about qira'at. So maybe we have two different circles, different milieus, and that explains why we have different differences. But we can see that these systems already exist, and even more, I think we can say that the 10 readings, we had more than 10 readings at first.
Thank you very much.
All right, doctors. Now we have a couple of written questions. I think one of them actually you might have already answered, but do you think that is there a manuscript that you think belongs to the Uthman period, like Uthman bin Affan, the 3rd caliph? Like,
well, that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against. It's completely possible. I said that we dated this manuscript with radiocarbon from the first half of the 7th century. So that would be possible to have manuscripts from Caliph Osman reign. Yeah, it's totally plausible.
All right. It might be connected with another question. This is a question from Mert Aysoysal. He asks about what are your thoughts on Christoph Luxemburg's theory that suggests that Arabic was in its very early stage during the time when the Quran was written, and that Syriac played a significant role? You already mentioned that we had professional scribes.
Yeah.
Who use the alphabet, and they had their literary traditions. It's I mean, like, seemingly like it's not the beginning of the Arabic. It shows like also the probably the oldest
Yeah.
like, there is a Safavidic script, and there is this this tradition behind Arabic, it seems. But there's also this kind of theory because of the terminology in Quran and some other various reasons. There is this kind of what's your take on this theory?
Yeah, well, I think Christoph Luxemburg's work is a little bit updated. I mean, a little bit ancient. Now I'm sure I have shown you that we are in front of something already very well established, and the manuscripts are definitely to be read in Arabic and not in any other language. I show you this small oblong manuscript, which is completely with dots, diacritical dots, and Luxemburg based his hypothesis on the fact that manuscripts were not were without dots. But now we know that we found manuscript with a lot of dots, so they cannot be read in other language than Arabic. No, for me it's impossible.
Right. Thank you for your answer. If there, there is another. Yeah, it's Mert Aysos, the person who asked the question. So let's hear. Did he just dropped, or Mujahid, can you help me in here? Like Mert was right.
Oh, I guess he asked his question and Cellard answered.
Oh, and he said, yeah, okay.
But I have a small tiny question, and I'm curious about it. I worked on Cairo Geniza, which is in Fustat also. I think the Fustat is kind of central has a central position about manuscripting or keeping manuscripts in like Geniza or in some deposit places. Did you look at Cairo Geniza, or did you find any manuscripts from Cairo Geniza along with the other Jewish manuscripts?
Yeah, well, I didn't work on the Cairo Geniza, but we know that there are some fragments. There are some Quranic manuscripts. There were in the Cairo Geniza, and actually, it's very interesting that geographically speaking, the Amr Mosque and the Cairo Geniza in the Ben Ezra synagogue are very close together in terms of distance. No, I know that there are some Quranic manuscripts there, but for the Amr Mosque, I don't know if there were some other language documents in other languages. That could be interesting to discover it, but I think today it's over. We cannot go in the past, and what is done is done. What the Western people took are today in Western institutions. We can work on that. We have these evidences. We cannot know what there was at that time. It has been dispersed a lot. Egypt was also a place where many dealers were circulating, and they were taking many fragments. So perhaps we have today fragments in Hebrew or in Syriac from the Amr Mosque, but we won't know.
Okay, thank you.
All right. There was another question, and I think it can have a short answer. I'm very sorry if you are all right. Can I just read it?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. What do you think about the idea that all qira'at are based on the Prophet and the word which I cannot read Arabic? I'm sorry. If you can just
okay.
Yeah, if you can just check the.
It's in the questions.
By Mustafa İlkaraskan, yes. It's.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. My question is that what do you think about the idea of all qira'at are based on the Prophet, and what do you think? Do you think the word wahid should be written with or without the alif? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I cannot answer about the question of all qira'at based on the Prophet or not. I'm thinking, but I don't have I cannot answer with my material approach. I think that's impossible to answer. And do you think the word wahid should be written with or without alif? Should be, you mean have to be according to my orthographical conventions, or because I think I don't remember actually. I don't remember what's the rule of wahid. That's a good question. I would need to check again, but I don't remember if wahid was written with or without alif first. Alif has been used. It was known. It's not that it was not existent. Some words were written without alif, so other words were written with alif. So for wahid, I don't know. Qala was definitely written without alif first, but for wahid, I don't remember. Sorry.
All right. I believe that these are all the questions. Like I think the yeah. So we're coming to close. Thank you so much, Dr. Cellard. It was really an enlightening journey for us. We learned a lot, and
thank you for your invitation.
I wish you luck in your incoming researches. We're gonna all follow.